I was drying my hands at the kitchen sink when my daughter-in-law lifted the house keys from their hook and told me, with a tidy smile, that I should start packing. My son stood 2 steps behind her, eyes on the floor, as if the tile might swallow him. This is the home I paid for, planted in, and kept standing through storms and funerals. Every creak belongs to my memories. She called it their place and said I was lingering. I heard my own breath slow, the way a kettle quiets right before it whistles. I didn't shout. 65 has taught me to measure my words and to keep certain papers where prying hands won't find them. She thought those keys were the power. She didn't know what was locked away. But before I tell you the rest of what happened, I'd love to know where you're watching from, your city or your country. I enjoy hearing that because it reminds me that every home, no matter how far away, carries its own stories too. When dawn broke the next morning, I wandered through my house as if I were walking through a museum where nothing belonged to me anymore. The curtains, faded but carefully washed every spring, hung neatly just as I had arranged them decades ago. The family photographs on the walls smiled back at me. My wedding day, my son's first birthday, a Christmas where we all still laughed together. Even the faint creak of the wooden floors under my slippers carried echoes of the life my husband and I built here. Yet, instead of comfort, everything felt fragile, as though a hand could sweep it away in an instant. I paused at the front door, hand lingering on the brass knob polished by years of use. I could still picture the day we first stepped into this home. My husband, taller than me by a head, had leaned against this very frame and whispered, "This will be our safe place, Maggie. No matter what comes, we'll always belong here." His voice felt alive again in my ears, and I pressed my forehead against the wood to steady myself. Safe place. How bitterly ironic that sounded now. When I walked into the kitchen, my daughter-in-law was already there. She moved quickly with a sort of sharp, dismissive energy. She shoved my recipe box aside to make space for her phone charger, tossed a ceramic sugar bowl I had owned since 1972 into the trash without even checking if it meant something to me, and began humming to herself as if this were her home. I heard the jingle of keys in her hand. That sound pierced me. "What are you doing with my keys?" I asked, forcing calm into my tone. She glanced over her shoulder, barely disguising her smirk. "Don't worry, I'll have the locks changed this weekend. You'll thank me. It's safer this way." "Locks? On my house?" My voice cracked despite my effort to control it. Her smile widened, cruel and bright. "You're overthinking, Margaret. Sometimes it's better to let younger people handle things. Fewer mistakes that way." My son sat silently at the table, sipping his coffee as though this was none of his concern. His eyes were fixed on the dark liquid, refusing to meet mine. I stared at him, begging silently for a flicker of recognition, for some shred of the boy who used to cling to my skirt when storms frightened him. But he said nothing, and that silence shouted louder than any command. In that moment, the fear that I might truly be pushed out of my own home pressed against my chest like a stone I couldn't lift. Later that afternoon, the mail arrived. Among the bills and catalogs lay a thick envelope stamped with the crest of the local bank. I noticed the weight of it immediately, but what startled me most was the name on the front. Not mine, but my son's. He tore it open before I could ask a word. "What's that?" I said. "Oh, nothing important. Just some routine paperwork." He folded it quickly, too quickly, and slid it into his pocket. But my eyes had caught something, a flash of the bank's mortgage department logo. My breath hitched. The mortgage! We had paid off this house decades ago. There should have been no correspondence about that. That night, long after they had gone to bed, I sat at the dining table in the half-light. The ceiling fan clicked overhead, circling the shadows. My husband had trusted me with every detail of our finances, every penny we earned, every bill we paid. We did it together. Never once did we let our son handle these things alone. Why then was the bank addressing him now? The thought gnawed at me until I could no longer sit still. I rose and made my way down to the basement, gripping a flashlight. Against the far wall stood a heavy metal box that had guarded our most important papers for years: the original deed, the insurance policies, the will. I reached into my pocket for the small brass key that had hung from my ring for decades. It was gone. My hand trembled. I searched every pocket, every fold of fabric, but the key was not there. Panic prickled along my skin. That key never left my side. The next morning, I asked her directly, "Have you seen a brass key? It opens the file box in the basement." Her lips curled upward, more smile than answer. "Maybe you misplaced it. People your age, they forget things." Her words sliced at me, cruel in their dismissal. I straightened my shoulders. "That key never leaves me," she shrugged, humming a tune as she walked away, her triumph ringing louder than her voice. I refused to be undone. I found a screwdriver and pried open the box myself. Dust puffed into the air, stinging my nose, but the folders lay intact. My hands shook as I pulled free the one marked will. The language was unmistakable. After my husband's death, the house and everything in it belonged to me entirely. Upon my passing, it would transfer to our son. Until then, it was mine. No mention of shared authority, no loophole granting him present power. So why did he act as though the deed already bore his name? As I flipped through, another document slipped out, stapled and dated just months before my husband's death. My blood chilled. It was a power of attorney, granting our son temporary control over financial matters while his father was hospitalized. It was supposed to expire upon death. My husband's signature was weak, the ink shaky from illness, but it was his hand. That document should have died with him. Had my son continued using it? Was he walking into the bank, still waving this paper like a weapon against me? The thought made my stomach twist. I needed clarity. That morning, I dressed carefully, smoothing down the blouse my husband once said made me look like a woman who means business. I walked into the bank we had trusted for so long. The lobby smelled faintly of polished wood and coffee. A young teller smiled politely, but it was the middle-aged manager behind the counter who noticed the strain on my face. He had kind eyes, the kind that paused long enough to ask questions. "Good morning, ma'am. How can I help?" I leaned in. "My name is Margaret. My husband and I held accounts here. He passed away last year. I need to know if there's been unusual activity, especially anything tied to my son." His expression darkened slightly, though he kept his tone neutral. "I'm not allowed to disclose account details without proper authorization, but," his voice lowered, a conspiratorial murmur, "if you return tomorrow, I might have something to show you, something you'll want to see." My pulse quickened. His words confirmed my fears. Something was happening, and it wasn't in my favor. As I stepped out of the bank, my phone buzzed. A new message lit the screen from my daughter-in-law. "Pack your things. The movers are coming Saturday." I stopped dead on the sidewalk. Saturday. They meant to throw me out within days. That night, I spread the will across the table. The old paper smelled faintly of mildew, but its words burned brighter than ever in my mind. My son walked in, shoulders hunched. He wouldn't meet my gaze. "It's for the best, Mom," he muttered. "Don't make this harder." My throat tightened. "Harder? You think stealing the roof from your own mother makes anything easier?" He flinched, but said nothing. His silence was his confession. I pressed the paper flat, refusing to tremble. "Your father trusted me with this house, and I will not give it up." What they didn't know was that I wasn't helpless. I had lived too many years, endured too many storms, to surrender quietly. The basement box still held secrets, and tomorrow the bank manager promised clarity. That gave me one night to prepare for whatever truth would finally rise to the surface. I did not sleep. The house made its nocturnal music, the fridge's steady hum, a limb tapping the glass, the furnace sighing awake, and I filled a notepad with dates, amounts, and names until the paper thinned. At first light, I dressed, pinned up my hair, and slid the notepad into my purse. I would walk into the bank, not as a frightened widow, but as the owner of my home. The manager met me at his door. Up close, I saw the tired decency in his eyes, the gravity of someone who carries other people's trouble. He offered a chair and closed us in. "Margaret," he said, "may I confirm your identification?" I handed my license and the account card with my husband's faded signature. He studied both as if honoring them, then placed a folder on the desk. "I cannot disclose everything," he said gently, "but I can show you documents that involve you as owner or agent, and I can accept a dispute." "Show me." He opened the folder. Photocopies, columns of numbers, watermarked transfer slips. He turned the first toward me and tapped the total. "Transfer," he said. "Online, $10,000, March 14th, destination, ending in 2198. "Whose account?" "I can't say, but it is not registered to you, or to my husband. He was gone by then." The manager bowed his head. "I'm sorry. Were there more?" He nodded and turned pages. April, Tunin, 5,000. April 28th, 8,000. 2 in May. Smaller pulls after, as if testing limits. I steadied my palm on the paper, as if cooling a fever. "Who authorized them?" He showed a profile, a login attached to an email I did not recognize, a device ID, a record of password resets. "These credentials were created when a temporary power of attorney was filed," he said. "It appears access was never revoked." "My husband died," I whispered. "The authority died with him. Legally, yes, but systems only change when someone files the change. It's a blind spot we fight too often." "Revoke it now," I said. "We can freeze online access immediately," he said, sliding a form forward. "We'll open an incident report and forward everything to compliance. Your signature." My hand did not shake. Ink drank my name. I felt steadier with every stroke. "There's more," he said, pulling a page from the bottom. "A business account received most of the funds. The name, does it mean anything to you?" I read it and tasted metal. The business used the street number of a friend's rental and a managing member name that mimicked my son's initials, a childish disguise. "I need a copy." He slid a photocopy and a stamped transfer receipt to me. The watermark shone under the light like a quiet oath. For a second, I saw my boy at 8, tying his father's boots, fierce against thunder. He had been gentle once, somewhere. Debt or pride had colonized him. "What should I do next?" I asked. "Freeze access." "Done," he said, checking boxes. "Set a verbal password for any in-person changes. Only you and your attorney should know it." I spoke a word into his microphone and repeated it. It felt like whispering a prayer to a wall that could answer. Outside, the sunlight looked indecently cheerful. I called the attorney my husband trusted, Miss Alvarez, and her assistant fit me in that afternoon. Her office smelled of lemon oil and paper. Diplomas marched along the wall. She led me in with professional kindness, and I laid the copies out. Transfer receipts, login profile, the shell company note. She read, then lifted her eyes. "You have been exploited, Margaret. The expired power of attorney was misused. We will act quickly." "How?" "Revocation of any agency, notice to the bank," she said, fingers moving over templates. "Emergency injunction to block transfers. Motion to confirm your right to remain. Your life estate implied by the will. We'll also prepare a memorandum to clarify it." He promised I would never have to leave, I said. "And you won't," she answered, "once the law stands between you and those pushing you." She printed and notarized the revocation. The stamp left a proud bruise in the paper. "Evidence," she said next. "We have 1, transfer receipts. We need at least 1 more, ideally 2. I can lure them to a conversation at the bank," I said. "If I say we must finalize something, they'll come." "In our state, one-party consent allows you to record," she said. "Keep it controlled and neutral. No provocation, no physical risk. Bank property is wise. Before that," she added, "bring the original will and the power of attorney. We'll make certified copies and inspect for manipulation. I told her about the missing key and the forced box. She kept her tone level. Bring everything tomorrow morning. We'll be ready. I left into a late afternoon the color of old brass. Somewhere a radio played my husband's song. For a few breaths the ache of him was so bright I had to stop. Then I straightened. Grief could wait. Work could not. Back home, I opened the metal box again. Dust rose, hinges groaned. I laid the will, insurance, hospital bills, and power of attorney on the dining table. I traced my husband's shaky signature and my son's flourish. A witness name I did not recognize scratched the last page. Who brought that witness? From where? Between pages a sticky note clung, scribbled with a sequence and 2 letters, 4 digits. A pin hint. I photographed it and tucked it back. My phone buzzed. We'll come by late to talk logistics. Quick. Logistics. I set a kettle and arranged the papers in a manila folder. If they came, I wanted the 4 walls to witness them. Houses remember better than neighbors. They arrived after 9. She entered first, wearing certainty like perfume. My son followed, hands in pockets, gaze low. We need to finalize the move, she said, drifting into the dining room without invitation. Her eyes flicked to the folder. What's that? History, I said. Sit. She didn't. She leaned on the chair back, impatient. We found a smaller place near the bus line. It's practical. You'll manage better. Practical, I repeated. And is the account ending in 2098 practical too? Her mouth twitched, surprise cracking for a heartbeat, then smoothed. My son finally looked at me. Mom, he said, a warning threaded through the word. I slid the transfer receipt across the table so the watermark caught the light. I spoke to the bank, I said. Online access is frozen. Further attempts will be flagged. She laughed too loudly. You can't do that. I already did. My son's jaw set. You don't understand how complicated things are. Then explain, I said. Explain the shell company with a name built from your initials. Explain why the mortgage department writes to you when the mortgage was paid before you were born. That's not what this is, he said quickly. It's refinancing. On a house you don't own, I said. His cheeks flushed. Dad would have wanted me to secure our future. You're wasting equity sitting here alone. Your father wanted me safe, I answered. He wrote that down. I tapped the will. She rolled her eyes. We'll talk to the bank tomorrow. They'll listen to reason. I smiled without kindness. Noon. Meet me there. We'll all hear the same reason together. Thinking she had won, she lifted her chin. Fine. Noon. They left with the confidence of thieves who believe darkness belongs to them. I texted the manager. Meeting with son and daughter-in-law at noon. Private room? He replied. Reserved. I'll be present. Security on standby. I locked the box with a cheap padlock I had bought that afternoon and slid it beneath a chair. I wrote a list, dates, amounts, the shell company, specific questions. At the bottom, I underlined, do not let them turn this into feelings. Keep it facts. Sleep came thin and tearing. Before dawn, I put on coffee and pulled my husband's flannel over my shoulders. Cedar, tobacco, winter air. I stood at the sink and spoke to him the way people speak to the gone when no one else is listening. I'll keep us safe, I said. I'll keep the house. At 11:50, I walked into the bank with my purse, my notepad, and my spine. The manager nodded toward room 3. Glass door, blinds drawn, a squat round table, 3 chairs. A placard read, Please silence your devices. I slipped my phone into my pocket, opened the voice memo app, and pressed record. Before he printed the forms, the manager swiveled his monitor so I could see an activity log, timestamps like the heartbeat of a thief, midnight resets, lunch break logins from a device that wasn't mine, a web browser I never used. A pale heat rose in my cheeks, not shame but fury, cooling into purpose. He showed me how the system tagged unusual behavior and how often the alerts had been dismissed by whoever held the credentials, dismissed, as if the house we built were a forgettable notification. I want physical statements mailed to me from now on, I said, and no change of address unless I'm here in person and speak the password. He typed quickly. Done. I'll add a note to flag any mortgage department requests too. If someone tries to initiate refinancing, The request will be held until you appear. Held is not denied, I said. It will be denied if you don't consent, he replied. Held keeps it from slipping through the cracks while we get you in the room. Get me in the room, I repeated, more to myself than to him. That would become the rule of this week. Be in the room where they planned to remove me. On the walk home from the attorney's office, I stopped at a hardware store and bought that padlock, extra folders, and a small digital recorder that could pass for a car key fob. The clerk rang them up without comment. Ordinary items, extraordinary use. At home I practiced, phone recording in my pocket, backup recorder in my palm, voice steady. I stood in front of the mirror and said, "Explain it to me plainly." Then I asked, "Who authorized the transfer on March 14th? Then, why did the mortgage department contact you?" Each question sharpened until it felt like a carpenter's pencil, thick enough to hold, pointed enough to mark. I wrote a script and underlined the places where I would be tempted to wander into hurt. "Stay on facts," I wrote again. "Facts first, feelings after court." When they had gone that night, I walked the perimeter of the house with a flashlight, looking at it the way you look at a sleeping child. The paint blister on the back door, the brick my husband replaced after the winter storm of '98, the maple tree he planted when our son was born, roots now thick, its shadow a rumor on the lawn. Everything here carried proof that we had been a family long before ambition made us adversaries. In bed, the ceiling fan ticked like a metronome counting down to noon. I pictured the bank's glass room and the way truth sometimes needs a table to be set down upon. I imagined my son's face when he realized the conversation would not be about whether I felt supported, but about dates and signatures, authorizations and law. I arrived at Ms. Alvarez's office with a manila folder and the steadiness I had practiced in the mirror. The morning was a rinsed gray. I told myself this day would leave a clean print with my name on it. Ms. Alvarez greeted me with a nod that felt like a promise. The conference room was small but had what mattered: a heavy table, a notary stamp, a witness chair. Her paralegal, Karina, set out paper stacks and a small digital recorder that looked like the key fob I'd bought yesterday. "We'll make certified copies," Ms. Alvarez said. "Then examine the power of attorney and the will. After that, we draft an affidavit confirming your right to reside for life." "Affidavit," I said, tasting the word's solidity. Karina fed my originals through the scanner. I watched my hands to stop their shaking. The veins were a map of everything I'd held together. "We'll label exhibits," Karina said. A. Will. B. Power of attorney. C. Transfer receipts. D. Photo of the PIN note. E. Activity log printouts. "Now, the missing key," Ms. Alvarez said. "On my ring. Always. 3 days ago there. The night before last gone. And you opened the box yourself, with a screwdriver. The papers weren't harmed. You did the right thing," she said. "Sometimes the lock is the thief." She read the power of attorney, finger-tracking clauses that once felt like protection and now read like a trap sprung by fatigue. "Limited to healthcare and finances while incapacitated. Revokes at death. No survivorship. Clear. So clear even I could read it," I said. "We'll attach a sworn statement confirming expiration and lack of new authority," she said. "Your bank records show access after the expiration. That's misuse." Karina slid a notary acknowledgement. "This attaches to your revocation and the injunction motion," she said. "Sign here." I signed. She pressed the stamp until the seal rose like a coin. "Now the will," Ms. Alvarez said. "Article 4. The residence remains yours for life. Upon your death it passes to your son, provided he has not materially harmed your ability to remain." She looked up. "Your husband left you more than comfort. He left you a lever." My throat tightened. "He knew how our boy could be. He knew you," she said. "We'll file a memorandum arguing your son's conduct is material interference." What happens after today? We messenger the revocation and affidavit to the bank, file the injunction and memo, and schedule an emergency hearing, she said. "Meanwhile, your noon meeting proceeds. Recordings create contemporaneous evidence. Admissions become corroboration." Karina placed the recorder in my palm. Slide to record. Battery lasts 8 hours. I have a twin of this, I said. I'll carry both. Redundancy is wise, Ms. Alvarez said. The manager favors facts but must remain neutral. Keep your questions clear. Ask who authorized specific dates and why the mortgage department reached out. I wrote them down. Good. If they explain, don't argue. Repeat the explanation in plain language. So you used access created under the expired power of attorney to transfer funds to this business account. Judges remember sentences like that. We executed the affidavit. I swore, and the stamp fell again. Miss Alvarez slid a letter addressed to bank compliance summarizing the misuse and listing exhibits. Courier will hand deliver. We'll also email for a timestamp, she said. How will you protect yourself emotionally in that room, she added. I blinked. I wrote one line. Don't let them turn this into feelings. Keep it fact. Then keep it fact, she said. If you slip, straighten a page and read the next question. That buys you 10 seconds that belong only to you. Karina checked the clock. It's 10:20. We'll have you out by 10:50 with copies and courier en route. I stood. Thank you for placing the law between me and harm. Go take your room back, Ms. Alvarez said with the calm of someone who trusts the chart she drew. Outside, the day brightened. I ducked into a stationery shop to notarize a simple declaration that my copy of the will matched the original. Multiplying proof felt like laying sandbags before a storm. On the way home, I bought batteries, envelopes, and a pen that wrote like conviction. At the kitchen table, I assembled a packet, certified will, affidavit, receipts, logs, pin note photo. Across the top, I printed for court. I checked the time, 11:35. The bank sat 25 minutes ahead, like a ridge I had to climb. Before leaving, I touched the metal box in the basement. He wrote it down for us, I said to the dark. Upstairs, I decided against wearing my husband's flannel. I didn't want pity. I wanted posture. I slid the recorder into my pocket, opened the phone memo app, and pressed record. At 11:55, I reached the bank. The manager waited by the glass corridor and gave a nod that said, I see you, I'm ready, we'll be careful. Room 3's blinds were half drawn. The round table inside was polite as a neutral judge. They arrived at noon. She led in heels that announced each step. He followed with hands in pockets, eyes flicking like a man who'd misplaced a principle. Thank you for meeting, the manager said. We're here to clarify and ensure any actions comply with policy and law. That's all we want, she said smoothly. Clarity. We sat. I took the chair against the wall, window to my right. I set my folder down and folded my hands over it. Let's start with the mortgage department's letter, I said. Why did they write to you? The mortgage is paid. He glanced at her. She smiled to cue him. We were exploring refinancing for improvements, she said. Upgrades increase value. On property that isn't yours, I asked, calm. Equity shouldn't sit idle, she said. We're family. We're thinking ahead. Who authorized the transfers on March 14th, April 2nd, and April 28th? I asked. She turned the smile on the manager. We had temporary authority during his father's illness. That authority expired at death, I said. You know that. My son finally spoke. We didn't use it after. We used the login that already existed. It's like keys. The house doesn't change locks the minute someone dies. He looked satisfied with the metaphor. The login existed because of that authority, I said. Using it after death is using the authority after death. The manager's tone stayed polite. Our policy, credentials created for a limited agency should be deactivated when the agency ends. Continuing use can trigger review and legal action. Her smile thinned. Is someone accusing us of a crime? No one is accusing, he said. We are clarifying. He nodded to me. Do you have documentation? I slid the watermarked receipt to the center. Transfer to account ending in 2098, I said. Date and time stamped. My son's jaw flexed. He stared at the numbers as if they might rearrange themselves into innocence. Explain it plainly, I said, hearing my rehearsal. Who initiated that transfer? He opened his mouth, closed it, then said, "It's my account. Your business account," I said. "Registered to the same number as a friend's rental. A pass-through," he said quickly, "for family expenses. Family expenses paid by my husband's account using a login that existed only because he was ill," I said. "Is that right?" I turned to the manager. "Is that an accurate description?" "It is a description," he said neutrally. "Whether authorization remained valid is a legal question. Council should resolve it." "Great," she said, brittle. "We'll get counsel. We're done here." She reached for the paper. "Leave the copy," the manager said gently. "It's for Miss Margaret's records." She withdrew her hand. My son swallowed hard. "Another question," I said. "Why did you ask me not to lock the basement door?" Her cheeks colored. "Movers need access. You make everything sound sinister." "The bank does not store documents in my basement," I said. "Yet you said the bank will need access to the basement files." "Why?" Silence gathered. I let it stand. Then I said even, "So you used online access created under a temporary power of attorney that expired at death to move funds into your business account, and you explored refinancing on property you do not own." "Mom," my son began, "am I accurate?" "We needed a head start," he said. "Renovations would benefit you too." "The first benefit I require is that my home remain mine," I said. "The second is that the law be obeyed." The manager summarized. "Online access is frozen. Change requests require Ms. Margaret's in-person verification and password. Mortgage inquiries are flagged for her appearance. For disputes, compliance coordinates with counsel. We can schedule a meeting with compliance present." He looked at me. "Would you like a printed summary?" "Yes," I said. He stepped out. The door stayed ajar. Through the gap, I saw a security guard station himself at the corner, present, not intrusive, like the law when it does its job. She leaned toward me, voice low. "You think this will save you? This house needs more than memories." "It will get more than memories," I said. "It will get maintenance and respect. You can't keep it forever." "I need my lifetime," I said. "The will grants exactly that." My son's shoulders sagged. For a moment I saw the boy again, then watched him disappear when he looked at her. The manager returned with a clear sleeve. "Freeze noted, password protocol set, flags added. Incident report number here," he said. "Anything else?" "Yes," I said. "Please note I'll file an emergency injunction this afternoon. Preserve all further activity for discovery." "Noted," he said. We stood. As I turned, my finger brushed the recorder in my pocket. I didn't need to check its light to know it had caught every word. Back at Miss Alvarez's office, I placed the summary beside the affidavit and the will. She skimmed and nodded to Karina. "File the injunction. Attach today's summary as Exhibit F." "Drafted," Karina said. "Judge Wexler's clerk has a slot tomorrow morning." Miss Alvarez faced me. "We'll deliver the packet within the hour. Take your copy home. Rest if you can. Tomorrow we place the law in a judge's mouth." Relief laced with steel moved through me. "Thank you," I said, "for sequence and weight." "Go home," she said. "Don't speak to them tonight. Let the papers speak." I walked out with the folder against my chest like a shield. Evening sharpened the streets. Outside a bakery, cinnamon lifted the air and set an old memory moving. Crumbs in a mustache, a playful scold. Tenderness tried to undo me. I kept walking. At home, I set the folder in the metal box and looped the padlock. I wrote tomorrow's list. Courthouse at 9, bank at 11 with compliance if requested, collect statements, deliver copies. Then I added 2 ordinary lines. Buy light bulbs, tighten the front door hinge. The house would not pause its small needs while the larger battle unfolded. When night came, I lay in bed and let the room breathe around me. The maple shook its leaves like a whisper. I spoke into the dark, the way people speak to the gone. "He wrote it down for us," I said, "and I am writing it down now." Sleep wasn't kind, but it came, thin, stubborn, protective as an old quilt. Tomorrow would ask for more. I would give it. I arrived 15 minutes early and sat in the lobby where the floor shone like still water. I kept my purse on my lap and touched the recorder in my pocket, feeling the ridge of the switch. The manager met my eye and gave a small nod. A woman in a navy blazer, a compliance associate named Whitaker, stood by the hallway door with a clipboard, the kind of person who lets facts speak first. "Room 3 is ready," the manager said quietly. "Blinds partially closed, security nearby as a precaution." "Thank you," I said. "It will be calm," Whitaker added. "If voices rise, we pause. If anyone reaches for papers that aren't theirs, we stop." I placed my folder on the round table. The air smelled of toner and pine cleaner. I set my notepad where my hands could find it. Rule in my head: facts first, feelings later, with the law. They arrived on the minute. My daughter-in-law entered first, performing poise. My son followed, shoulders tight. The manager greeted them evenly and sat nearest the door. Whitaker stayed by the glass. "Thank you for meeting," the manager said. "Our goal is to clarify authorization, access, and next steps." "That's our goal as well," my daughter-in-law said smoothly. Whitaker asked us to state our names for the record and to confirm that we were here voluntarily. The ritual took 30 seconds, but it seemed to unclench the air. "No recordings by the bank," she said, "but personal note-taking is permitted. If anyone chooses to record for personal use, understand your own legal obligations." She looked at each of us in turn, her gaze steady but not hostile. I kept my face composed and my hands folded. The phone in my pocket hummed once as the voice memo marked a new minute. The tiny vibration felt like a metronome, reminding me to keep time with the facts. "Why did the mortgage department contact you?" I asked. "The mortgage has been paid for years. We were exploring improvements," she said. "Refinancing for a new roof, a safer porch, an updated kitchen. It benefits everyone." "Everyone who lives here," I said. "Which is me." My son cleared his throat. "We were trying to be proactive." "Using what authority?" He looked at the manager. "We used Dad's login," he said. "The one he let me manage while he was in the hospital." "Temporary access created by a power of attorney," I said. "It expired when he died." Whitaker noted something. The manager said, "Bank policy expects deactivation when a limited agency ends. Online access is now frozen. In-person requests require the owner's password. That can be revisited," my daughter-in-law murmured. "It can be maintained," I said. I slid a photocopy of the transfer receipt to the center. $10,000 on March 14th to an account ending in 2098. Who initiated this and why? "It went to my business account," my son said, "for renovations, registered to the same street number as your friend's rental," I said. "It's a pass-through. Family expenses. Family expenses paid with a login that existed only because your father was ill," I said. "Say it so we all hear it." He hesitated, then said almost proudly, "I used the login. It's like having the keys. Dad trusted me. I advanced what would be mine." The manager's pen paused. Whitaker's eyes lifted. My daughter-in-law reached for the receipt. The manager raised a hand. "Please don't touch Miss Margaret's documents." "This is ridiculous," she said. "She can't keep this place in shape alone." "I can keep a roof over my head," I said. "What I can't keep is patience for those who call control care." The room seemed to hold its breath. Somewhere in the hallway a printer started, spitting paper like a distant rain. I felt a steadiness rise, the kind that comes when your footing returns under you, plank by plank. I remembered my husband's phrase from years ago when a contractor tried to overcharge us. "Stand on the receipt, Maggie. If it's paper, it's proof." I stood on it now, not with weight, but with words. Whitaker's voice stayed neutral. "We have an admission that access created under a limited agency continued to be used. We have transfers to a related business. We have a mortgage inquiry by a non-owner. Do you dispute any of that?" "No," my son said. "But context matters. We're preventing waste. The context is a will that grants me the right to remain in this home for life," I said. The manager tapped the table. "Let's focus on next steps. We proceed with refinancing," my daughter-in-law said. "She can live here, but the money must work." "Refinancing requires the owner's consent," Whitaker said. "The owner is Ms. Margaret. She doesn't understand the market. my daughter-in-law replied. She's emotional. I understand. Stewardship versus seizure, I said. And what it's called when funds move into a shell? Preference. For whom? Not me. Stop making this combative, my son said. It's clear, I said, opening my notepad. On April 2nd and April 28th, transfers of 5,000 and 8,000 occurred. Who authorized them? I did, he said. From whose account? Dad's. Then the joint. There is no active joint account with my name and yours, I said. There was a time-bound authority that ended. The house remains mine for life. He spread his hands. Then charge me with caring. The porch is rotten. The roof leaks. The porch is already scheduled with a local carpenter, I said. The roof has a paid deposit. Neither requires you, my daughter-in-law snapped. We're not asking. Your things need to be packed by Friday. Movers are coming. Movers are not entering under a false pretense, I said. The only door you're opening is the one to court. Whitaker looked from face to face as if checking the temperature of a room. Compliance exists so that procedures protect people, not the other way around, she said quietly. We are not arbiters of family pain. We are caretakers of process. Her words were not meant to console, yet they steadied me more than kindness would have. Kindness can be challenged. Process is harder to budge. Whitaker said, let's reset. The bank's role is compliance and safety. We're fine, my daughter-in-law said, lowering her voice. Unless you prefer headlines, elder neglect, unsafe conditions. A judge would be interested. Neglect scraped across the table like a dull blade. Call what you like, I said. I have documents. The manager returned with a printed summary. Freeze, password protocol, mortgage flags, incident report number. He placed it in a clear sleeve in front of me. Anything else for today? He asked. Yes, I said. When did you first access the basement file box? My daughter-in-law laughed. A dramatic word for a tin container. It wasn't locked. It was, I said, until it wasn't. You asked me not to lock it because the bank would need access. The bank does not store records in my basement. Why? My son spoke first, anger boiling through restraint. Because you hoard papers like a dragon. We needed to know what he left and what we could move. What you could move, I said. Not what you deserved. This is going nowhere, my daughter-in-law cut in. We'll consult our attorney. Please do, Whitaker said. Meanwhile, all changes are paused pending verification from the owner. We'll see about that, she said, standing so fast her chair scraped. She reached for her handbag and knocked her water bottle into my folder. The manager caught it before the splash spread. The bottle had been capped earlier. She had unscrewed it while we spoke. I watched and filed the detail away. They left together. Him a pace behind, his shoulders hunched like an excuse. I placed my palm on the recorder in my pocket. Warmth answered. Friction, current, evidence. Miss Margaret, Whitaker said, do you need an escort to your car? I'll be fine, I said. But I want a copy of today's summary with your initials. Of course, she clicked her pen. We have internal notes reflecting the admission. Those will be produced if subpoenaed. Thank you, I said to the manager, and for reserving the room. If compliance requests a recorded statement, will you be available? He asked. Yes, I said, but we'll likely be speaking in a courtroom next. I walked past the security guard and the teller windows where ordinary life moved in small, honest transactions. Outside, a breeze ran along the awnings like a hand smoothing a sheet. I stood in a square of shade and breathed. At Miss Alvarez's office, I set the recorder on her desk and pressed stop. Karina transferred the file and ran a transcriber. Our conversation turned into time-stamped lines, each sentence its own rung. Chain of custody, Miss Alvarez said. We'll log the device serial, transfer time, and a file hash. Then 2 mirror copies, one for the court packet, one for secure storage. Will it be enough? I asked. She listened to the first minutes, eyes on the text. I used the login, admission. I advanced what would be mine, intent. The rest is context and motive, she nodded. It's enough to request emergency relief and open a fraud inquiry. Karina printed the transcript and attached a certification page. Exhibit G, she said. Audio recording and transcript. Miss Alvarez reviewed the folder. A. Will. B. Power of attorney. C. D. E. Receipts, PIN note, logs. F. Today's bank summary. G. The recording and transcript. We'll file before the clerk's window closes. Will he be arrested? I asked. I didn't want shackles. I wanted a boundary that held. That isn't today's question, she said. Today we protect your residence, block further transactions, and set the investigation in motion. Consequences arrive in their own time. Then let's place the law where it belongs, I said. You did that, she replied, by telling the truth on paper and in the room. I left at dusk. The oven's sweet air had cooled. When I reached my house, I set the drives and the printed transcript in the metal box and looped the padlock, pinning the key inside my blouse. The house exhaled, boards settling. In the hallway, I replaced the dim bulb and tightened the front door hinge with my husband's screwdriver. Each turn a declaration. This stays. This holds. This is mine. Before sleep, I opened my planner and wrote tomorrow's shape in dark ink. Courthouse at 9. Testimony ready. Exhibits in order. Breathe before speaking. Speak only to the judge or my lawyer. Let paper do the heaviest lifting. I underlined the last line twice. Paper doesn't tremble the way hands do. Paper remembers. I brewed tea and sat at my table in my kitchen in my home and waited for quiet to become more than silence, for the first draft of peace. The courthouse smelled faintly of coffee and copy paper. I arrived early with Ms. Alvarez, who walked like a metronome, measured, precise. The corridor hummed with small cases, traffic tickets, a landlord dispute, 2 teenagers whispering to a public defender. Our bench felt solid. My folder a lid over heat. Breath here, Ms. Alvarez said, tapping her sternum. Then read the next line on your list. We keep it to facts. I nodded and drew a steady sip of air. When the clerk called our case, I stood. My son was already there with a man in a charcoal suit, Mr. Hart. My daughter-in-law wore palace, calm, and a jacket the color of wet pavement. They looked rested. I felt awake. Judge Wexler peered over glasses, gray hair sharp as a comma. Emergency motion, seeking injunctive relief, he said. Appearances? Alvarez for petitioner, Margaret. Hart for respondent, he said, nodding toward my son. My daughter-in-law adjusted her jacket, folding herself into the plural. The judge glanced at the packet. Will address irreparable harm, likelihood of success, and equities. Counsel, begin with evidence. Ms. Alvarez stood like a lighthouse. 3 steps, Your Honor. First, bank transfer receipts. Second, the will and affidavit confirming petitioner's life estate. Third, a lawful recording containing an admission. Mr. Hart lifted a hand. We reserve objections, particularly as to the recording. Objections will be heard, the judge said. Proceed. Exhibit C, Miss Alvarez said, giving the clerk copies. Bank transfer receipts, authenticated as business records. Multiple transfers from petitioner's account to an account ending in 2098. The judge scanned. Counsel, he said to Mr. Hart, do you dispute the existence of these transfers? We dispute characterization, Hart replied. Funds applied toward family maintenance. Maintenance of a non-owner's business account, Ms. Alvarez said evenly. Registered to a friend's rental. Corporate records available. Later, the judge said. For this motion, Exhibit C is received. He angled the screen so I could see the neat columns. Numbers marched like intention. My daughter-in-law whispered to Hart, glancing back at me as if disdain itself were strategy. The judge turned a tab. Exhibit A, the will. Article 4, life estate to petitioner and a condition against conduct that interferes with her ability to remain. Practical effect? Petitioner keeps the home for life, Ms. Alvarez said. Upon her death, it passes to her son if he has not materially interfered. Attempted refinancing, use of expired credentials, and pressured move-out qualify as interference. Hart was quick. Will show petitioner's safety required help, and respondents sought to stabilize finances for urgent repairs. Where is the emergency in moving her out by Friday? Ms. Alvarez asked. We have a text from the daughter-in-law threatening headlines about neglect. We offer it for context. Hyperbole, Hart said. We are not trying neglect today, the judge said. We are deciding whether to maintain the status quo and prevent further financial activity. He looked to Ms. Alvarez. Your third piece, Exhibit G, she said. A recording made by petitioner in a one-party consent jurisdiction, documenting respondent's admission that he used the login established under a temporary power of attorney after the principal's death to transfer funds to his business account. Hart rose. Objection, foundation, authenticity, relevance, prejudice. Foundation is petitioner's testimony and chain of custody log, Ms. Alvarez answered. Authenticity supported by concurrent transcript and hash. Relevance goes to authorization and intent. Overruled for purposes of the motion, the judge said. He turned to me. You're prepared to testify you made it, were present, and the voices are yours, your sons and your daughter-in-law's. Yes, Your Honor. I pressed record. I did not alter it. The clerk played the excerpt. Whitaker's neutral preface, my questions, my son's voice. I used the login. I advanced what would be mine. The words lit the room like a flare. When it ended, Hart tried to sand the edges. Familial context, Your Honor. The son was trying to secure future stability by moving money without valid authority to a business account, Ms. Alvarez said, and initiating refinancing on property he does not own. I have what I need, the judge said. Petitioner shows likelihood of success on the merits as to her right to remain and unauthorized use of credentials. The balance of harms favors status quo. I will issue an order. Hart half rose. We request a carve-out for necessary repairs. The owner may conduct repairs, the judge said, through contractors of her choosing. Respondents may not direct funds or contractors pending hearing. He looked at me. Ma'am, this keeps you in the home while we examine larger issues. Do you understand? I do. The words tasted like clear water. The judge wrote briefly. Ruling. 1. Respondents are enjoined from initiating transfers or refinancing related to the property or petitioner's accounts. 2. Bank shall maintain freezes and flags and cooperate with compliance. 3. Respondents shall not harass, intimidate, or attempt to remove petitioner. 4. Preserve evidence. 5. Review hearing in 2 weeks. He lowered his pen. Counsel will submit an order consistent with these terms. I'll sign before lunch. Air returned to my lungs. Ms. Alvarez rested her fingertips on the table, a quiet anchor. Then the judge added, level and heavy. I will refer the record to the district attorney for review of potential financial exploitation. That is not before me today, but it will not go unseen. The sentence rang like a struck rail. Hart's jaw moved. My daughter-in-law's eyes measured the door. My son finally looked up, the boy flickering behind the man. Court adjourned. The next case rose like a tide behind us. In the hall, Hart told Miss Alvarez, we'll oppose permanent relief. We'll bring evidence about the property. Bring it, she said. Bring conscience too. She turned to me. We'll wait for the signed order, then get you home. We sat. The corridor looked like a corridor again, not a cliff. The clerk brought the stamped copies, crisp with authority. The order lay in my hands with its own heartbeat. When the clerk returned with the signed order, the ink looked almost wet. Ms. Alvarez held it up for my eyes alone, not to gloat but to orient me. This is the map, she said. Follow it for the next 14 days. Call me if anyone tries to redraw it. I slid the order into a clear sleeve and felt the slight resistance of plastic, the tiny rasp that says, sealed. My daughter-in-law swept past without a glance. Hart matched her stride. My son lagged. He stopped near me, not quite facing. This isn't over, he said softly. It shouldn't be, I said. What ends is pretending. I was trying to help. Help is a ladder you hold, I said. Not a hand that takes, he swallowed. What happens now? Now I go home, I said, and you hire a lawyer who tells you the truth. He nodded and followed them down the hall, posture arguing with itself. Outside, Sunlight felt like a new coin. Miss Alvarez phoned a courier to deliver the order to the bank. "They'll update flags," she said. "Your manager will see it." We stopped at the bank anyway. The manager greeted us with relief. Whitaker initialed receipt. "Flags remain," she said. "Access stays frozen. Any attempt will require your password in person and trigger an alert." She slid a printout that echoed the judge's terms. "Thank you," I said, "for being neutral when you had to be and human when you could." "We try," she said. On our way out of the bank, the manager stopped me. "Ms. Margaret," he said, "I wanted you to know my mother kept a file box like yours. She said the same thing you said to me. If it's written, it remembers." He smiled, awkward and sincere. "Will remember." I surprised myself by squeezing his hand. Not gratitude for heroics, but for ordinary people doing their jobs as if jobs mattered. At home, the house greeted me like a dog waiting by the door. I set the order on the table, made a copy for the metal box, and rolled up my sleeves. The porch carpenter arrived. His hammer kept time with a heart choosing to continue. The roofers confirmed next week. I paid deposits from my account while the new protocol blinked yes for my voice and only mine. Near dusk, a car idled at the curb. My daughter-in-law sat inside, engine purring. She didn't get out. She stared at the house as if it had crossed her. I stepped onto the newly steady porch and waited. The window lowered halfway. "You think you've won," she said flatly. "I think I can sleep," I said. "He won't forgive you. Forgiveness sits with the one who took," I answered, "not the one who remained." The window slid up. She drove away. The maple tossed its leaves in a wind that smelled like rain. I felt no triumph, only the relief of a fever breaking. Inside, my phone buzzed. A message from my son. "I need time." 3 words, no punctuation, a rope thrown from an uncertain boat. I let the screen dim. Some bridges can be inspected later. I brewed tea and sat with the signed order, the receipts, the will, the transcript, names that now meant Shield, Alvarez, Whitaker, the manager, the judge. I stacked the papers and felt a floor that wasn't just wood. It was paper, inked, stamped, notarized, laid like planks from courthouse to front door. Night drew the street in. A neighbor's dog barked at nothing, then believed the nothing and stopped. I walked the hallway, turning off lights, leaving the kitchen for last. At the doorway, I looked back and saw not a battlefield, not a prize, but a home with its lights politely out, waiting for morning. I clicked the switch and listened to quiet step in. I went to bed with the order under the metal box, the key still pinned inside my blouse. Sleep came without bargaining. In the dark, I said a single sentence to the air that belonged to my husband and to the house. "We are staying." The air said nothing back, and that, at last, felt like peace. 2 weeks later, the porch no longer groaned and the roof no longer argued with rain. The court's order sat in my metal box like a small lawful heart. The bank reversed the last transfer and flagged the rest for restitution. Ms. Alvarez began a civil action to recover what could be recovered. The district attorney's office asked for copies. I gave them paper and time. My son kept his distance. He sent one message that said he was thinking, and I let the word live without reply. Love doesn't mean stepping aside while someone rearranges your life. Love means holding a door open to honesty and shutting it to harm. As for her, a letter arrived from the bank's compliance unit asking about her role in the shell company. She did not come to my porch again. There are doors you cannot kick when the house learns to stand on documents. I spend my mornings with a list and my evenings with tea. I pay bills, I oil a hinge, I speak out loud sometimes, the way old women do when the room is kind. "We are staying," I say, and the house answers by simply being here. Here's what I learned. Paper matters, but so do boundaries. A will is a promise someone writes down so you can carry it when your hands are shaking. A recording is a mirror that refuses to flatter, and a mother's job ends long before a son thinks he owns the deed to her future. Family should be a harbor, not a claim. If you have a home, guard it with facts and with friends who respect the rules. If you have a heart, guard it with the same. If this story steadied you, please like and subscribe so more people hear it, and tell me in the comments your city and country and one boundary you're keeping this week. I'll be here at my table reading where you're watching from and cheering for your good fences.